My kids haven't eaten in 3 days, she begged the rancher. Feed them and I'll be yours forever. The sun was high in the sky, casting its hot golden light over the wide fields of the ranch. The air smelled faintly of dry grass and cattle. Dust swirled gently in the wind, and the ranch was quiet, except for the occasional lowing of cows and the distant crow of a rooster. The rancher walked along the fence line, checking the posts and listening to the soft hum of the wind through the trees. He was a man who had spent most of his life here, working from sunrise to sunset, and he liked things to be calm and orderly. He had long grown used to his own company, finding comfort in the rhythm of chores and the steady presence of his animals. Life had taught him to be cautious, to trust slowly, and to rely on himself above all. It was in the midst of this calm that a sudden movement at the edge of the property caught his eye. A woman appeared, walking hurriedly along the dusty path that led to the ranch gate. She was thin, her clothes worn and patched, and her hair fell in tangled strands around her face. Behind her clung 2 small children, a boy and a girl, both pale and thin, their eyes wide with hunger and fear. The woman's steps were uneven, her feet dusty and sore, yet she pressed on as if the weight of the world was pushing her forward. When she reached the gate, she stopped and leaned against the wood, catching her breath. Her eyes, filled with desperation, met the rancher's, and something unspoken passed between them. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "My kids, they haven't eaten in 3 days. Please." "I don't know where else to go." Her voice cracked, and she reached for the children, holding them close. The little boy buried his face in her skirt, and the girl clutched at her mother's hand, shivering. The rancher felt a pang of something he had not felt in a long time. Pity, maybe, or the first stirrings of concern that reached beyond his own walls. He said nothing at first, simply watching them. He had heard many stories of people who came to the ranch asking for help, but most of them were strangers, and the world had taught him that strangers often came with trouble. Still, there was something different about this woman. She did not appear to be asking for charity out of habit. Her eyes told the truth of suffering, and her voice carried the weight of someone who had been pushed to the edge. The children's hollow cheeks and thin arms were evidence enough. The rancher could see it clearly. They needed him. Not just food, but safety, shelter, a chance to survive. I don't have much," he said finally, his voice low and cautious. "But I can give you water. Sit a moment." He stepped aside, motioning for her to enter the gate. She hesitated, as if wary of being turned away, then stepped forward, the children following closely. As they passed through the gate, the rancher noticed the smell of dust and sweat clinging to them, the way their tiny hands gripped her skirts, and the silent plea in their eyes. He knew this was not a request to be taken lightly. It was a call for help, urgent and sincere. He led them to a shaded area near the barn, where a small table and a few chairs sat. He filled a basin with water, and the woman quickly lifted the children to drink. They gulped and splashed, their parched throats seeking relief from the long days without food. The woman watched them, her eyes full of gratitude and worry at the same time. She could not help but notice how the rancher observed them quietly, his expression unreadable. It was a careful kind of watchfulness, one that suggested he was deciding how far he would go to help. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice catching again. "I don't have anything to give you, but please, just feed them. They haven't eaten in days. I don't know what I'll do if I can't feed them." Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, and her eyes were pleading, but also steady, showing that she had endured much and refused to break completely under the strain. The children looked up at him, their eyes large and trusting, and something in the rancher softened. He had not expected to feel this way, but the sight of innocent hunger, the helplessness of those who depended entirely on another, touched him deeply. He walked slowly to the house, motioning for her to wait. In the kitchen he gathered what food he could spare, a few loaves of bread, some cheese, and boiled vegetables he had saved for later. It was not much, but it would be enough for the children to eat and regain some strength. Returning to the shaded area, he placed the food on the table and watched as the children's faces lit up with wonder and relief. They dug in, eating eagerly but politely, their small hands trembling with hunger and excitement. The woman knelt beside them, gently brushing crumbs from their cheeks, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. As they ate, the rancher took a step back and allowed himself to observe them quietly. He noticed the way the little girl's hair fell across her forehead as she bent over the plate, the way the boy's fingers clutched the bread, and the subtle movements of a mother who had been through so much yet still maintained grace and composure. He could see the traces of hardship etched in her face, the lines of worry, the tiredness in her eyes, but also the strength that had carried her this far. She had come to him not as a beggar, but as a mother determined to save her children. When the meal was finished, the woman thanked him again, her voice still soft but stronger this time. I don't know how to repay you," she said, looking at him with sincerity. "I will do anything you ask, if only my children can eat." The rancher nodded, saying only, "Rest here for a while. You and the children can stay in the barn tonight. I will give you more food in the morning." He spoke simply, but his words carried weight. They meant safety, even if only for a little while. The woman's relief was palpable. She embraced her children gently, holding them close as if to shield them from the world's harshness. They huddled together, their hunger eased for the moment, their small bodies sinking into the warmth of her arms and the quiet security of the ranch. The rancher watched them, feeling a connection he had not anticipated. There was no rush for conversation, no demand for explanation, just the quiet presence of people in need and the ability to help. That night, as the ranch settled into its usual rhythms, the woman and the children rested in the barn. They had simple bedding, but it was enough for them to feel safe and cared for. The woman sat quietly, her mind full of gratitude and worry, knowing that the road ahead would not be easy. She had come seeking help, but she had found something more, someone willing to offer protection and sustenance without immediate expectation. The children slept, their faces peaceful for the first time in days, and she allowed herself a moment of hope. The rancher, meanwhile, returned to his chores. He tended to the animals, repaired fences, and moved through the familiar motions of his life, but his thoughts kept returning to the small family he had allowed into his world. He wondered about their past, about the trials that had led them to his gate, and about the ways in which they might survive. He knew helping them would not be without challenges, but he also knew that he could not turn them away. Something in him had changed, stirred by the sight of their need and the woman's quiet courage. As the stars appeared overhead, casting a soft glow over the ranch, the woman finally allowed herself to rest fully. She watched the night sky through the open barn door, feeling the cool breeze on her face and the warmth of her children beside her. For the first time in days, she felt a small measure of peace. Tomorrow would bring more work, more decisions, and more challenges, but tonight they were safe. Tonight they had eaten. Tonight there was hope. And so the ranch, usually quiet and solitary, became a place of refuge, a place where desperation met compassion, where hunger met generosity, and where the first bonds of trust began to form. The rancher had opened his gate, the woman had stepped forward with courage, and the children had found the nourishment they needed. In the quiet of that evening, there was a sense of beginning, not just of survival, but of something more, something fragile yet undeniable. The first step toward a life where they might all belong together. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, spreading light across the wide fields and the barn where the woman and her children had spent the night. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of hay and earth. The children awoke first, their small voices whispering to each other as they rubbed the sleep from their eyes. The little girl stretched her arms and yawned, while the boy climbed out of the simple bedding, his bare feet brushing against the wooden floor. They looked at each other with quiet excitement. The world felt safer, warmer, and brighter than it had for days. The woman, still tired but relieved, watched them carefully. She had been through too much to allow herself to relax completely, but the sight of her children alive and unharmed brought a warmth to her chest that she had not felt in a long time. She moved quietly to the small kitchen space inside the barn. Starting a simple breakfast, water was drawn from the nearby well, and a few eggs, bread, and fruit the rancher had left were prepared carefully. She wanted the children to eat well, to regain strength, and to know that this place was a safe space, at least for now. She called softly to them, and they came quickly, their faces lighting up at the sight of food. The boy, who had barely eaten the day before, looked at the bread and scrambled eggs with wide eyes, and the girl reached eagerly for a small piece of fruit. They ate slowly at first, learning to trust that there would be enough this time. The rancher emerged from the house, observing the small scene from a distance. He was careful not to intrude immediately, allowing the woman to manage the morning routine. He had seen many people come and go, some seeking help, and some seeking to take advantage of his kindness. But there was something different about this woman. She was not asking for more than she needed, and she treated the children with care and attention that was rare and genuine. The rancher felt a quiet respect for her, a recognition of the struggle she had endured to bring her children to this moment. It was clear she had survived through determination and resilience. After breakfast, the woman cleaned the small kitchen area, washed dishes in a basin of water, and then stepped outside to greet the morning. The ranch was alive with sounds: the lowing of cattle, the rustle of the wind through the trees, and the distant clatter of hooves. She walked toward the fence line where the rancher was checking the animals, and he looked up as she approached. Their eyes met, and for a moment, no words were needed. A silent understanding passed between them. She had been trusted into this place, and he was watching to see how she would handle it. He nodded slightly, acknowledging her presence, and returned to his work. The woman spent the day helping with small chores. She swept the barn, gathered firewood, and carried water for the animals. The children played nearby, chasing each other around the hay bales, their laughter ringing out across the open fields. The rancher observed them carefully, noticing the energy in the children and the way the woman encouraged them gently, keeping them close and safe. Her movements were careful, deliberate, as if she were teaching them how to survive in a world that had been harsh and unkind. The rancher began to realize that her presence brought not only need but also life and warmth to the ranch, and he found himself appreciating her more with each passing hour. As the day went on, the woman learned more about the rancher's routines. She watched him feed the cattle, mend fences, and care for the horses. He worked with a steady, practiced rhythm, and she began to understand the small details that kept the ranch running smoothly. She helped where she could, offering assistance without complaint, and he accepted her help with quiet gratitude. There was an unspoken connection forming between them, built not on words but on shared work, mutual respect, and the simple acts of kindness that each offered the other. The children, sensing the calm and safety, followed her lead and stayed close, learning to trust this new environment. During the afternoon, a challenge arose. One of the cattle had injured its leg, limping and struggling to keep up with the herd. The rancher noticed immediately, his brow furrowed with concern. He called the woman over and asked for her help in guiding the animal to a quieter part of the ranch where it could rest. She nodded, understanding the urgency, and together they moved carefully, the woman's hand steady as she helped the animal walk without causing further pain. The rancher watched her skillfully manage the situation, impressed by her calm and quick thinking. He realized that she was not just a desperate mother, but a capable person, able to respond to challenges with intelligence and care. As evening approached, the rancher offered the woman and her children a proper meal. The table was set with simple but nourishing food: roasted vegetables, fresh bread, and a stew made from ingredients grown on the ranch. The children's eyes lit up as they saw the abundance, and they ate eagerly but politely, remembering the hunger that had haunted them only days before. The woman thanked the rancher quietly, her voice filled with gratitude. She felt a growing sense of hope, realizing that her children were safe and cared for, and that perhaps this place could become a refuge rather than just a temporary shelter. After the meal, the woman and the children settled near the fire. She told the children stories, soft and comforting, speaking of adventures and places they might one day see. The children listened, their eyes wide, their imaginations taking flight even in the quiet ranch. The rancher observed from a distance, noting the warmth of the scene. He felt a sense of satisfaction in providing not just food, but a space where these children could feel safe and loved. It was a feeling he had not experienced in many years, and it touched something deep within him. As night fell, the woman prepared the children for bed. She tucked them into the small blankets, smoothing their hair and speaking in gentle tones. They drifted off to sleep, their faces peaceful and relaxed. She stayed a moment longer, watching them, and then allowed herself a brief rest. The weight of her worries had not disappeared, but the immediate crisis had been met. Her children had eaten, they were safe, and she had found someone willing to help. The rancher, meanwhile, completed his evening chores, tending to the animals and securing the barn for the night. He returned to the house, reflecting on the unusual day and the unexpected bond that was forming with the woman and her children. In the quiet of the night, the ranch felt different. It was no longer just a place of work and solitude. It had become a sanctuary. The woman had brought not just need, but life, warmth, and resilience. The children's laughter and curiosity had filled spaces that had long been empty, and the rancher, who had been cautious and reserved, began to feel a sense of connection he had not known in years. He understood that this was only the beginning, that challenges would come, but also that hope and trust had taken root in the soil of his ranch. The woman sat by the small window, watching the stars appear one by one in the dark sky. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the hunger and fear that had driven her to the ranch gate. She thought about her children, sleeping safely, and about the man who had opened his doors without judgment. She felt a quiet gratitude mixed with a cautious optimism. She did not yet know what the future held, but she knew that this place, this ranch, could become a new beginning for her family. The night was calm, the wind soft through the trees, and the ranch settled into silence. The woman, the children, and the rancher each found their own space in this new arrangement. There was trust forming, careful and tentative, but real. The first steps of a bond that could carry them through hardships had been taken. And though the world outside the ranch was harsh and unforgiving, within these walls, for now, there was safety, sustenance, and a fragile but growing hope. The next morning dawned with a soft golden light that spilled across the ranch. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of earth and morning dew. The children woke early, their small voices whispering to one another as they prepared for the day. The little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, asking if breakfast was ready, while the girl bounced with quiet excitement, happy for another day without hunger. The woman smiled softly, her heart lifting just a little. She was still weary from the journey and the hardships that had brought her here, but seeing her children healthy, safe, and hopeful brought a sense of relief she had not known in weeks. She prepared a modest breakfast, careful to make enough for everyone. She had learned the day before that the rancher provided well but expected effort in return. She wanted to show her gratitude through her actions, so she moved with determination, making the meal as pleasant and nourishing as she could. The children sat quietly, listening to the sounds of the ranch waking around them. The soft lowing of cows, the gentle whinny of horses, and the faint rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. Each sound was a reminder that the world could still hold safety, care, and consistency, even if only for the moment. The rancher appeared shortly afterward, his presence calm and quiet as always. He nodded to the woman, acknowledging the breakfast she had prepared, and then gestured toward the barn. "I have work for you today," he said simply. "Help me with the animals and the fence. The weather will stay good for a few hours. Let's take advantage of it." His tone was straightforward, without any pretense, but there was an underlying trust that showed he had observed her efforts and recognized her capability. She nodded, understanding that this was not just about labor, it was about earning a place here, showing commitment and building trust. As they moved through the ranch together, she noticed the details she had missed before. The way the horses moved with intelligence and grace, the precise alignment of the fences, and the care taken with the cattle. She followed the rancher's instructions carefully, learning how to lead a stubborn animal, how to repair a fence post, and how to observe subtle signs of illness or injury in the livestock. He watched her closely, impressed by her attentiveness and natural skill. She was careful, deliberate, and quick to learn, qualities he valued highly. Though he had spent years working alone, he found himself appreciating the company and the way she approached tasks with patience and respect. The children played nearby as the work continued. They ran through the fields, their laughter echoing across the open space. They were learning, too, about the rhythms of ranch life, though in their own way, watching animals, helping carry small items and following their mother's guidance. The woman watched them carefully, keeping a protective eye while also allowing them to explore, learning to balance safety with freedom. She saw how quickly they adapted to this new environment, and her heart swelled with pride. Despite all they had endured, they were resilient, curious, and full of life. Midday brought a small challenge that tested both the woman's and the rancher's skills. A young foal had become trapped near the edge of the woods, struggling to free itself from a fallen branch. The rancher noticed immediately and called the woman over for assistance. Together they worked carefully, using ropes and gentle guidance to free the foal without causing injury. The woman's hands were steady, her mind focused, and the rancher found himself silently impressed by her calm under pressure. He realized that this woman was not simply a desperate visitor. She was capable, intelligent, and compassionate. Her ability to respond to crises with quick thinking and care made the day feel lighter, even amid challenges. After freeing the foal, they returned to the barn to check the other animals. The woman took it upon herself to distribute feed, carefully measuring portions and observing the livestock for any signs of distress. The rancher allowed her to take the lead at times, stepping back and trusting her decisions. Their relationship, though still formal and cautious, was deepening through shared effort and mutual respect. They were learning about one another not through words alone, but through actions, choices, and the quiet understanding that comes from working together in difficult circumstances. As the afternoon approached, the woman noticed that one of her children was unusually quiet. The little boy, who had been energetic and lively, now sat with a frown, holding his stomach. She knelt beside him, concern washing over her. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. He looked up at her with wide eyes and whispered that he felt dizzy and tired. Alarmed, she called the rancher over. He examined the child carefully, noting slight dehydration and fatigue, likely from the past days of hunger and stress. Though it was not life-threatening, it was enough to require immediate attention and care. The woman felt a wave of anxiety, realizing that her past struggles could still have consequences even here. The rancher acted quickly, preparing a light, nutritious meal for the boy and offering water. The woman assisted, holding her child close and soothing him as he ate. She watched the rancher's actions with growing admiration. He was efficient, kind, and calm, handling the situation without panic or harshness. She felt a sense of relief knowing that her children were safe in his hands, and that she was not alone in managing the challenges of survival. This moment of shared responsibility further solidified the fragile trust between them. Later, as the sun began to lower in the sky, they completed the remaining chores together. The woman had learned how to work with the animals, repair minor damage, and care for the children while also assisting the rancher. Each task completed successfully built her confidence and further demonstrated her capability. The rancher, in turn, began to see her not merely as someone in need, but as a partner in this space, someone whose contributions were valuable and whose presence was meaningful. The children, now feeling stronger, ran freely around the barn and fields. The woman watched them with pride and relief, seeing the joy that came from simple safety and nourishment. They laughed, chased each other, and played games with sticks and leaves, their energy returning gradually. The woman smiled, realizing that these small moments of normalcy were precious. She had endured so much to reach this point, and seeing her children happy, even briefly, made all the hardships worth it. The rancher observed from a distance, noting the transformation in the children and in her demeanor. She had begun to settle, her anxiety slightly eased, her focus now on care, connection, and survival within this new environment. That evening, the rancher and the woman prepared a shared meal. The kitchen, though small and simple, became a space of quiet collaboration. She prepared the ingredients while he offered guidance and support. The children sat nearby, watching intently, learning about food, preparation, and cooperation. The woman thanked him softly, acknowledging his guidance and his generosity. He nodded, quietly accepting her gratitude, understanding that actions and effort often spoke louder than words. The meal itself was modest but nourishing, a symbol of progress and stability in a life that had been marked by scarcity and struggle. After dinner, the woman and the children settled near the fire. She told stories of faraway places and adventures, using her voice to comfort and inspire. The children listened, wide-eyed, imagining worlds beyond the ranch, even as they felt safe in their immediate surroundings.
The rancher watched from the doorway, the warm glow of the fire illuminating the scene.
He felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. This was not just a matter of feeding children or providing shelter. It was about nurturing hope, building trust, and fostering resilience. And in that small, intimate moment, he recognized the profound impact of simple kindness and consistent care.
As night deepened, the woman tucked the children into their bedding.
She smoothed their hair, whispered words of encouragement, and allowed herself a moment of reflection. Her journey had been long, difficult, and filled with uncertainty, but here for the first time in days, she felt a sense of stability. She had found someone willing to help without judgment, a place where her children could be safe and nourished, and the beginnings of a community that could support them. Though the future remained uncertain, this night brought a measure of peace, hope, and trust that would carry her through the days to come. The rancher, meanwhile, completed his evening rounds, ensuring that all animals were fed and safe for the night. He returned to the house, reflecting on the events of the day. He had been cautious, wary of outsiders, and protective of his solitude, but he had allowed trust to guide his actions. Watching the woman care for her children, observing her diligence, and noting her resilience, he felt a sense of connection forming, quiet, cautious, but real. He understood that helping her and her children was not a simple act of charity. It was the start of a relationship built on trust, effort, and mutual respect. As the night settled over the ranch, the wind whispered softly through the trees, and the stars shone brightly in the clear sky. Inside the barn, the woman and her children slept peacefully, their small bodies finally rested and fed. Outside, the rancher stood for a moment, looking at the calm scene, understanding that the day had marked a turning point. Trust had been built, bonds had begun to form, and the foundation for a new life was being laid. And though challenges would surely come, tonight was proof that hope, courage, and care could transform even the most desperate circumstances. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, bathing the fields in a warm, golden light. The woman woke first, quietly checking on her children before the day began. They slept peacefully, their small bodies stretched under the simple blankets she had arranged for them. For the first time in many days, she felt the sense of calm and relief. The hunger that had haunted them, the fear that had kept her awake at night, had eased, if only slightly. She watched them for a moment, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face, and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. The ranch had become a place of safety, and the man who had opened its gates had begun to feel like more than just a stranger. He was becoming a protector, a steady presence in their lives. Breakfast was a quiet affair. The rancher moved through the small kitchen, preparing a simple meal of eggs, bread, and fresh milk for the children. The woman helped, chopping vegetables and arranging the food on plates. She noticed the way he worked efficiently, carefully, but without unnecessary words. His focus was on the task, yet there was a calm authority in his presence that made her feel reassured. The children ate eagerly, their small hands grabbing morsels, but their mother kept a gentle hand near them, guiding them to eat slowly and steadily. The laughter and chatter that accompanied the meal was a sound she had not heard in weeks, and it lifted her spirits as she prepared for the day's work. The rancher called them outside after breakfast. There were chores to do, and he wanted her to help. The woman gathered the children's attention, explaining that they could play safely nearby while she assisted. The children nodded obediently, understanding that this was part of the routine, part of learning to trust the rhythm of life on the ranch. Together, she and the rancher went to the barn and the fields, checking fences, feeding the animals, and tending to the small tasks that kept the ranch running smoothly. She had begun to learn the patterns of ranch life, the careful steps needed to move cattle, the gentle approach to horses, and the observant eye required to notice subtle signs in animals that could indicate illness or stress. As they worked, the woman and the rancher spoke quietly, exchanging small pieces of conversation that revealed glimpses of their pasts. She told him of the difficulties she had faced as a single mother, the nights of hunger, the days of worry, and the journey that had led her to his ranch. He listened carefully, offering little in words, but much in attention, nodding and asking practical questions when necessary. There was no judgment in his voice, only a steady presence that allowed her to speak freely. In turn, he shared parts of his life, years of solitude, the responsibilities of the ranch, and the careful routines that had governed his days. Through these exchanges, trust grew. It was quiet, steady, and earned through actions as much as words.
By midday, the woman had become an essential part of the ranch work.
She helped the children with small tasks, showing them how to carry water, gather feed, and care for the animals in ways that were safe and manageable. The rancher observed their interactions, noting the way she guided them with patience and care. He realized that her presence had brought more than just relief to the children. It had brought a sense of warmth, structure, and emotional stability that he had not anticipated. The children responded to her guidance, learning quickly and playing safely under her watchful eye. Their laughter and curiosity filled the open spaces, weaving a sense of life and energy into the ranch that had been quiet for so long. A challenge arose in the afternoon when a sudden storm began to approach. Dark clouds rolled across the sky and the wind picked up, carrying with it a sharp chill. The rancher immediately began moving the livestock to shelter, guiding the cattle and horses into barns and secure areas. The woman followed closely, assisting where she could, calming the children who had become frightened by the sudden change in weather. She held them close, shielding them from the wind and rain, and helped guide the animals to safety. The storm was a test, not just of skill but of trust and cooperation, and both the woman and the rancher rose to the occasion. Working side by side, they managed the situation efficiently, and the children watched, learning the value of preparedness and calm in the face of adversity. Once the storm passed, the rancher and the woman assessed the work that had been done. Some minor repairs were needed to fences and gates, but nothing critical had been lost or damaged. The woman felt a sense of pride in their efforts, realizing that she had contributed meaningfully to the safety and operation of the ranch. The rancher, too, felt a quiet satisfaction, recognizing her capability and resilience. There was an unspoken acknowledgement between them, a recognition of shared effort, mutual respect, and the beginning of a bond that went beyond mere necessity. Evening approached, and the woman prepared dinner with the rancher's guidance. They worked together seamlessly, dividing tasks and supporting each other. The children watched, eager to help in small ways, learning from the example of the adults. The meal was simple but nourishing, and they ate together at the table outside, enjoying the cool evening air and the sense of completion that came from a day well spent. The woman felt a growing connection to the rancher, not just for his provision, but for his steady, reliable presence. She began to see him not as a stranger, but as someone who could be trusted, someone whose care and consistency offered a foundation for the future. After dinner, the woman gathered the children by the fire, telling stories of adventure, hope, and courage. The children listened intently, their imaginations ignited, and their small bodies relaxed in the warmth of her embrace. The rancher watched from a distance, seeing the transformation in their spirits, and felt a quiet pride. This was more than survival. It was growth, healing, and the creation of a space where trust, love, and safety could flourish. He realized that the woman's presence had brought life not only to the children but to the ranch itself, filling it with energy, care, and hope. Later, as the children slept, the woman reflected on the day. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the struggles she had endured, and the resilience that had kept them moving forward. She considered the rancher, the quiet man who had offered them shelter, guidance, and trust. She felt a sense of gratitude and connection, understanding that this place could become a home, not just for survival, but for growth, learning, and belonging. The challenges of the past were still present in her mind, but the hope of the present and future offered a new kind of strength. The rancher, meanwhile, completed his evening rounds, checking the animals and ensuring that all was secure for the night. He paused for a moment, looking toward the barn where the woman and her children were resting. He reflected on the day, on the ways in which she had helped, learned, and adapted. He felt a growing respect for her, recognizing her strength, intelligence, and dedication. He understood that the bond forming between them was not immediate or easy, but it was genuine, built on trust, effort, and shared experience. In the quiet of the evening, he felt a sense of peace, knowing that the ranch had become a place of refuge, hope, and the beginnings of a family. As night fell over the ranch, the wind whispered gently through the trees, and the stars appeared one by one in the dark sky. Inside the barn, the woman and her children slept soundly, their faces peaceful for the first time in days. The rancher, standing outside for a final moment, took in the scene, understanding that the day had been transformative. Trust had been built, bonds had strengthened, and the foundation for a new life was being laid. And though the world beyond the ranch remained unpredictable and harsh, within these walls there was safety, care, and the quiet promise of a better future. The woman's heart was full of cautious optimism. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, that life was unpredictable, and that every day would require effort, patience, and resilience. But she also knew that they were not alone. She had found a place of stability, someone who could be relied upon, and a sense of possibility for her children's future. The rancher had become more than a helper. He had become a steady, trustworthy presence, offering guidance, support, and safety. And as the night deepened, she allowed herself to feel hope, a feeling she had not experienced in a long time. Within the ranch, life had begun to shift. The routines, the shared efforts, and the quiet moments of connection had transformed it from a solitary workplace into a sanctuary of growth, learning, and care. The woman had found her place not only as a mother protecting her children, but as a capable and contributing member of the ranch community. The children, too, had begun to thrive, their spirits lifted by nourishment, safety, and love. And the rancher, who had long valued solitude and routine, found himself touched by the resilience, dedication, and warmth of this small family. The night passed quietly, the barn warm and safe, the animals secure in their stalls. The woman and her children rested, gathering strength for the days ahead. The rancher reflected on the events of the past days, realizing that this was more than an act of kindness. It was the start of something meaningful, built on trust, shared effort, and the quiet bonds that form when people work together in the face of challenges. And as the stars shone over the ranch, there was a sense of quiet fulfillment, a feeling that life, though still uncertain, held promise, connection, and hope. The morning light stretched across the ranch, soft and golden, as the woman awoke to the sound of birds singing. The children were already stirring, their small voices filled with excitement and curiosity. The little boy climbed out of the bedding, brushing the sleep from his eyes, while the little girl rubbed her hands together and yawned. They had grown stronger over the past days, nourished by the food and care that the rancher had provided. For the first time in weeks, they moved with energy rather than exhaustion, their laughter echoing softly across the fields. The woman watched them, her heart swelling with relief and gratitude. She had survived hardship, hunger, and fear to reach this point, and now, for the first time, she felt a sense of real hope for the future. Breakfast was prepared quickly but carefully. The woman moved through the kitchen with quiet focus, making eggs, bread, and fresh fruit for the children and tea for herself. The children ate with eager anticipation, their small hands moving quickly but politely, a reflection of the care and guidance their mother had instilled. The rancher joined them silently, taking his place at the table. He observed the scene quietly, noting the calm efficiency with which the woman handled the morning routine and the healthy energy of the children. There was a sense of normalcy here, one that had been missing from their lives for so long. It was a fragile, precious thing, and he felt the weight of responsibility for maintaining it. After breakfast, the rancher led the woman and the children outside. The day was bright and clear, perfect for work and exploration. He explained the tasks for the morning, giving the woman specific instructions while the children played safely nearby. She followed his guidance carefully, learning more about the routines, the animals, and the rhythm of life on the ranch. Each task completed successfully gave her confidence, and the rancher watched her with growing admiration. She was strong, patient, and capable, qualities that had carried her through the trials of her past and that now allowed her to thrive in this new environment. The children were nearby, learning from both adults. They carried small bundles of feed, helped to gather hay, and observed the animals, asking questions and receiving gentle guidance. Their curiosity was boundless, their energy infectious, and the woman felt a sense of pride as she watched them. She realized that these moments of learning and play were as important as the food and shelter they had received. They were growing not just physically but emotionally, learning trust, responsibility, and the quiet strength that comes from safety and care. The rancher, too, felt a sense of satisfaction. He had not only provided sustenance, but had created an environment in which this small family could begin to heal and grow. Midday brought a new challenge. A group of cattle had wandered toward a fence that had been weakened during the last storm. The rancher noticed immediately and called the woman over to help guide the animals to a safer area. She approached calmly, assessing the situation, and worked alongside him to move the cattle. Her hands were steady, her voice clear, and the animals responded to her guidance. The rancher observed quietly, impressed by her skill and composure. He realized that her presence was not just beneficial to her children, but also to the ranch itself. She had become an integral part of the daily operations, capable, thoughtful, and reliable. After the cattle were safely redirected, the woman and the rancher returned to the barn to check the other animals. The children followed at a distance, learning the importance of observation and care. The woman encouraged them to notice small details, the way a horse's ears move, the way a cow shifted its weight, the sounds of contentment or discomfort. The children listened intently, their eyes wide with understanding. For the first time, they were learning skills that could help them navigate the world with confidence and care. The woman felt a quiet pride in their progress, understanding that this was a foundation for a future that was no longer defined by fear and hunger. As afternoon approached, the woman and the rancher worked together to prepare the fields for the coming season. They repaired fences, moved hay bales, and tended to small tasks that ensured the ranch would remain productive and safe. Their cooperation was seamless, built on trust, observation, and shared purpose. The woman had learned quickly, adapting to the demands of ranch life, while the rancher had come to appreciate her presence and contributions. There was a quiet understanding between them, a bond that had grown through shared effort, observation and care for the children and animals alike. The children, now confident and playful, explored nearby areas under the woman's watchful eye. They ran through the fields, laughing and calling to one another, their energy a reminder of life's resilience. The woman encouraged their curiosity while ensuring their safety, and the rancher noted the joy that had returned to their faces. For him, it was a profound change. He had come to value the small moments, the children's laughter, the woman's calm guidance, and the shared efforts that kept the ranch running smoothly. These moments were simple, yet they held great significance. They represented stability, trust, and the beginning of a family built on care and mutual respect. As the sun began to lower in the sky, the woman prepared dinner. The meal was modest but wholesome, made from ingredients grown and gathered on the ranch. The children helped in small ways, setting the table and fetching water, learning responsibility and cooperation. The rancher joined them quietly, appreciating the harmony that had developed. This was more than feeding and sheltering. It was the creation of a routine, a rhythm that allowed trust and bonds to deepen. The woman's presence had transformed the ranch from a place of work into a space of growth, learning, and stability. Dinner was eaten together, the family sharing stories, laughter, and small victories from the day. The children spoke of their adventures, their observations, and their discoveries. The woman listened, guiding their words, offering encouragement and gentle corrections. The rancher watched quietly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had provided more than food and safety. He had created an environment in which this small family could flourish. The bond between the woman and the rancher was still cautious, yet it had deepened. There was mutual respect, understanding, and the beginnings of trust that extended beyond mere necessity. After dinner, the woman gathered the children for the evening. She told stories of courage, kindness, and hope, weaving lessons into the narratives that captivated their imaginations. The children listened, eyes wide, absorbing not just the stories but also the calm, steady presence of their mother and the rancher. The woman felt a growing sense of connection, understanding that this ranch had become more than a temporary refuge. It was a place of stability, a foundation for the future, and a symbol of the strength and resilience that had carried her through hardship. As night fell, the woman took the children into bed. She smoothed their hair, whispered words of reassurance, and watched them drift into sleep. The rancher, completing his evening rounds, paused outside the barn to observe the scene. He felt a quiet satisfaction, understanding that the day had marked a turning point. Trust had been established, bonds had strengthened, and a foundation for the future had been laid. The woman had shown courage, resilience, and care, and the children had begun to thrive. In this quiet moment, he understood the significance of simple acts of kindness, shared effort, and consistent care. The night was calm, the stars bright in the clear sky. The woman allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the challenges that had been overcome, and the trust that had been established. She considered the rancher, whose steady presence had provided safety and guidance, and she felt a quiet sense of gratitude and hope. She realized that this place, this ranch, had become more than a shelter. It was a home, a foundation for a future filled with possibility and stability. The rancher, standing quietly near the barn, felt a similar sense of reflection. He had long valued solitude and routine, yet he now recognized the significance of connection, trust, and care. The woman's presence had brought life, warmth, and energy to the ranch, transforming it into a space where bonds could grow and thrive. He understood that this was the beginning of something meaningful, a family forged through shared effort, mutual respect, and the quiet understanding that comes from enduring hardship together. In the days that followed, routines became established. The woman and the children contributed steadily to the ranch, learning new skills and growing in confidence and strength. The rancher continued to guide and support them, offering both instruction and trust. The small family began to flourish, finding joy in daily tasks, the natural beauty of the ranch, and the shared experiences that had brought them together. Trust deepened, respect grew, and a sense of belonging emerged, replacing the fear and desperation that had once dominated their lives. The woman reflected on her journey, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and hope. She had come to the ranch in desperation, seeking only food and safety for her children. What she found was more: a community, stability, and a man whose presence offered protection, guidance, and a quiet understanding. The children had regained their strength, laughter had returned, and life had begun to feel full and meaningful once more. The rancher had not simply offered food and shelter. He had provided a foundation upon which hope, trust, and love could grow. As the night deepened, the ranch settled into quiet peace. The woman and her children rested, gathering strength for the days ahead. The rancher, completing his final checks, paused to look toward the barn. He saw the small family within, safe, fed, and connected. A sense of fulfillment and satisfaction filled him. He understood that the challenges of life would continue, but for now, this small family had found stability, trust, and hope. The bonds that had formed through hardship, care, and shared effort would guide them through the future, offering strength, comfort, and resilience. The night passed quietly, the stars shining brightly overhead, and the ranch became a symbol of possibility and hope. The woman, her children, and the rancher had faced hardship, fear, and uncertainty. But together they had created a space of trust, safety, and care. The journey was not over, but the foundation had been laid. The family had found a home, nourishment, and connection, and the future held promise, stability, and the quiet joy of being together. In the stillness of the night, a new chapter had begun, a chapter filled with hope, resilience, and the certainty that together they could face whatever challenges might come.